Welcome back to another series of career journeys. I am your host, Coach Stella. Thank you so much for joining us today. Happy Friday Eve. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on the time zone in which you are joining us. I am very excited today for our latest guest, Mr. Clement CJ Okeke. Um, Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Really excited to dig in today and talk through your testimony, but we'll call it a journey for today's episode. So let's, without further ado, get started here. Thank you all so much for joining. I know there are still people coming on. We are continuing our summer series of career journeys where we talk with everyday people about the ins and outs of their careers and how they navigated it throughout their lives. So we're joined here today by CJ. Hope you don't mind that I stick with CJ for today's interview.
Not a
Please,
problem.
yes, introduce yourself to the people. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you do, and anything you think would be helpful as we unpack your journey.
Sure. My name is CJ Okeke. Go by Chudy as well. I'm from Rogers Park neighborhood in Chicago, Illinois. Born and raised in Rogers Park. Went to Lincoln Park High School, so lifelong Northsider, and then went to University of Missouri, where I studied real estate finance and sociology. Worked in commercial real estate finance for over 15 years now. Started off at Fitch Ratings, worked there for around 7 years, rating commercial mortgage backed security, which are bonds that are backed by commercial real estate mortgages. Went over to Freddie Mac as a senior underwriter there for 3 years, where I was more of a loan level underwriter, underwriting conventional multifamily loans. Um, And then from there, I resigned and worked on a personal project with a college classmate of mine, an adaptive reuse of a vacant elementary school. We were converting to affordable housing slash urban farm development. After that, after the pandemic killed that deal, I went back into the workforce and started working for a Kroll bond rating agency where I was again rating CMBS securities and a new bond that was called CRE-CLOs, which was a different type of execution, but we can discuss that later. And from Kroll, once the markets went bad after the pandemic boom, the markets tanked after the Feds cut the interest rate or increased interest rates, I should say. And then I was laid off, unfortunately, and then I decided to go fully into Florida development. So I was hired as an underwriter for the city of Chicago Department of Housing, where I underwrote affordable housing developments that were financed by low income housing tax credits, which is tax credits that are part of the Tax Reform Act of 1986, which was passed to essentially bring the private real estate industry into public housing. And that's the main apparatus for financing for affordable housing. So I did that for a year. And then fortunately, I was hired recently this summer by National Equity Fund. And now I currently run their agency lending platform along with my boss, where we are doing debt placements on affordable housing developments. And I can cover what that means later on as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes, definitely lots to unpack there. But let's start from the very beginning. Let's bring it back to childhood. And then full disclosure for the audience, CJ and I grew up in the same household. We are siblings in more ways than one. Uh,
Mhm.
Greek brother and sister, as well as biological brother and sister.
Yes,
So
yes.
let's bring it back to the beginning. So we often get this common question growing up: what do you want to be when you grow up? So, Trudy, what did you want to be when you grew up, and how did you come to that vision?
Well, for me, that's a loaded question because I've always had a big imagination growing up and always wanted to live a big life. And I think that's just a privilege of being the youngest child. I think you have the liberty to kind of dream and run around and take chances and do what you want. So at first, I was really infatuated with being an astronaut. I was so infatuated with space, interested. I just read everything about every astronaut I can find, read everything about the solar system, just anything. But once I turned 12, I was 6 feet already. And so realized you can't fit in the cockpit. There are certain height restrictions. I had to switch my dreams there. But that's when my body started developing. I was always a tall kid, but that's when I started hitting puberty and muscles started popping up out of nowhere. So that's when I turned, to maybe I can be a professional athlete, and in particular football. I played Pee Wee football starting at 10 until I injured my thumb, and then our mom pulled me out of football as moms do. But once I got into high school and got around my coaches who took me under their wing, and I really started developing and started training more and more, that's when I really thought to myself that I could really be a professional football player. And so that was probably my main aspiration for most of my teenage years. And then transitioned to college. I always wanted, backing up, I've always wanted to be in real estate just because that's a dream our mom had. Our family owns properties in Nigeria, and I've always thought that was pretty cool to provide housing for people. I thought that was just an honorable profession, and it's always something I wanted to get into on the side. But I thought my entry into that was to just get rich. Essentially, I didn't really know what real estate entails and how intricate real estate is. So I just assumed I'll play football and own a bunch of properties on the side, subsidized property, of course. I've always had my affordable housing aspirations. But got to college, so I wanted to be a real estate lawyer. So sociology was a pathway to that, to go into law school. I've always liked people, always like interacting with people, always like studying people and how they interact with the environment and society itself. So I thought sociology was the perfect segue into a real estate law career. But around junior year, I would say one of my frat brothers got a property manager job where he was living for free. And I thought that was so cool. And I wanted to emulate that. So I ran around looking for a property manager job, lucked up and got a leasing agent job. And then I started taking my real estate finance classes. And that's when I realized, oh, there's a whole segment of finance that's real estate finance. And it's not just selling houses, it's income producing properties, which is literally every property that we function in and we live in. And it's a whole world I was not privy to. So I immediately switched my thoughts and went on to be in commercial real estate finance. And here we are today.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So let's back up a little bit. You talked about it as a child, that you wanted to become a professional football player, and as a means to be in real estate, to own properties. So let's unpack that a little bit. So your aspirations going to college was to play college football.
Hmm.
So talk me through um, the recruitment process. What was some of the highlights of your recruitment process, and how did that land you to Mizzou?
Sure. I say starting off football, I just had the size, and our older brother played football. So when I came into Lincoln Park High School, I already had a reputation for just being this big guy who's going to just knock people out, because that's what our older brother did. They would call me Lil Kiki, because he was Big Kiki, of course, because of our little name. And I would hear so many stories about just how hard he would hit people and how tough he was. And I just wanted to emulate that. So first 2 years, I was trying to get out of his shadow, because he was a man in school. And then around junior year, that's when I really hit my stride. I started going to the weight room early in the morning. My coaches really took me under their wing. Coach Rush, Coach Thomas, Coach Berger in particular, they really sat there with me for hours on end and trained me and worked me out in the morning, then after practice. And that's when the recruiting letters started pouring in. I had a drawer full of letters from Big 10 schools, Big 12 schools, all these big time programs. And that's when I realized, okay, I'm working with something here. I'll never forget Notre Dame, their defensive line coach, defensive coordinator, came to our practice, came right into the school. My coaches brought him immediately into the office, started talking me up, telling them how good of a kid I am, and I just will never forget how much they looked out for me. And then Northwestern as well, they were the first to recruit me, and I always appreciate that, because Northwestern recruited me, put me on the radar to all the other schools, because Lincoln Park, we're a public school. We're known for basketball, so we were a big time football program. This is unheard of at this time, So this is a big deal for these big time programs to be recruiting me. So like I said, Coach Berger, he really saw the potential in me and really took a liking to me. And I really love that man. He really saw the potential and really pushed me to go for that D1 scholarship. And he played for Michigan State, so he was really just gung-ho about Michigan State. That's all he talked about, Michigan State. So I just thought I was going to Michigan State because he just made it sound like the best place on earth. But they weren't recruiting me. Don't know why. But Western Michigan was recruiting me heavily. And, they're still a big-time program, smaller, but they're still in the MAC D1. And they gave me a official visit. So they drove, me and our dad drove out there. They wined and dined us. They actually came to one of my games against Kenwood, and they saw me playing there and another kid and who did pretty good. Went on the recruiting trip, saw that same kid at the last dinner. I'm like, what is he doing here? I'm like, oh God. Then we go home. He was like, oh, we'll call you, don't call us. Come to find out a week later, the coach called and say, oh, they offered the last scholarship that was available to this kid. So that was detrimental, and it was late in the process. So Northwestern was so close to our house. I didn't want to go there. I wanted to leave the state. So I kind of played them to the left. Everybody, it was just so late in the process that the only ones who were still left was Mizzou, who still had interest. But it was past the deadline for official visits, so I just went down there on my own for an unofficial visit. Took a Greyhound bus straight to Columbia, loved the campus, fell in love with it, and said, yeah, I want to go here. Just going to earn my time and just, earn my keep. Went to Mizzou. It was good, going good. And after the Nebraska game, which is a big game for us, that's the first time we beat them in like 20 years. I get a call from the coach saying, hey, you're ineligible. I'm like, well, why am I ineligible? It was like, oh, your ACT test scores is invalid. So essentially, since it was so late in the game, we took our school, Lincoln Park, offered the ACT test for free on what's called a state test date. They should have been on a national test date in order to be eligible for the NCAA clearinghouse, which is a system that determines whether kids are eligible or not academically for football. And what happened, it was a high ACT score, but it was just ineligible because it was in the wrong date. So ended up being ineligible. had to get that whole thing fixed. By the time it got fixed, the season was over. It was the next summer. They wanted me to come back as an offensive lineman since I played that in high school as well. By this time, already bought a car, moved out with my roommate, with some roommates of mine, and it just wasn't in the cards for me. And that's when I realized I didn't really love football as much as I thought I did. I've always been a great athlete, always loved sports, but I've always wanted to play at a big time program. Always wanted to go to a big school, play on TV, 30,000 kids. I wasn't going to go to D2 a D3 school and try to fight my way back to a D1 school and transfer to something. I wasn't going to do all that. So I was just like, you know what? I'm a multifaceted kid. I always had confidence in myself. I have an irrational level of confidence in myself. I know what I'm capable of. I know I can do 10 different things that will get me to where I want to be. So I just said, you know what? Football is not it right now or anymore. I did try to call the coaches who recruited me for Western Michigan. He moved to another school, called Northwestern. Unfortunately, the head coach who's recruiting me passed away from a heart attack. And the linebackers coach who's recruiting me went to another school, Miami of Ohio. Didn't want to go there. So it was a wrap. And so I decided, I didn't want to I've always been a personal person. I've always wanted to live a big life. I didn't feel like being a regular student, so to speak. I didn't know what that meant. I've been a student athlete for so long, so I joined the fraternity, pledged my fraternity, Phi Beta Sigma, Blue Phi, freshman year, second semester, and that was one of the best decisions of my life. It taught me leadership, it taught me organization, structure, taught me the Robert Rules of Order. It just taught me how to run a corporate boardroom, so to speak. Our president at the time, chapter president Doug, he was a business major, so the way he structured a chapter was with actual board executive roles, CEO, COO, CFO, etc. So it just really gave me the inside look on what corporate America was, and I liked it. I thought I never would have liked it. I never wanted a job where I sat in front of a desk all day, in front of a computer screen all day. And luckily, I don't have that kind of job. I travel. I got to travel a lot in every job I've had in my entire career, and I lucked up. So, yeah.
That's awesome. So, okay, I learned something new every day throughout these series, is folks' journeys. So for you, football was the dream, NFL was the dream. It sounds like you just went through what I have typically have come to learn the recruitment process. It's brutal, and
Yes.
a lot of back and forth, and some folks get what they envision, some folks don't. It looked like for you, you didn't get your top choice, but you were okay with that. And due to red tapes,
Mm-hmm.
um, it was delayed. And in that delay, you saw other opportunities. And it sounds like you made the decision um, to end your football pursuits and get in transition into college life. And pledging your fraternity was one of the ways to do that. And that really set you up for this next chapter. That is awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I don't think, as a student athlete turned fraternity member and into a campus leader, we don't talk about those transitions a lot. So I thank you so much for giving light to that.
I would
So
not. I would say though, it was not an easy transition. I was very depressed for a while, to the point where I didn't watch football honestly for years after college until my little cousin Jesse started playing for Maryland. That's when I started watching football again. Luckily, I was grounded, so to speak. I watched our parents migrate from Nigeria after our father fought in the Civil War, which they lost, come to this country with nothing, and make everything on themselves and raise three kids, put all three into college, never complained, and they just got it done. And that's always been, I've always credited my work ethic to both our mom and our father. So keeping that in the back of my head and seeing their trials and tribulations and how they just never gave up. They always made a way. It put things in perspective. And then when I moved out of the dorms and moved into the apartments with my roommates, DT and Ruben, and I met my core friend group, it changed my perspective as well. When you're in high school, you don't really know how people. You kind of get some insight into how people are living outside of school, but you're removed from that because it's your parents. It's yours and their parents. But when you're in college, you're living on your own. You're seeing how people are paying their bills. And my roommate is DT Ruben, and I will watch them work overnight, uh, stocking shelves in Walmart, walking to Walmart because they didn't have a functional car at the time, just to pay their tuition. And I didn't have to do that. So yeah, football was hard. Not playing football was hard, but seeing other people's situations, keeping my situation in perspective, listening, thinking about our parents, thinking about DT Ruben, observing DT Ruben, observing my other friends, it just gave me that kick in the butt I needed to just get over it and make something happen in your life. Because life is not going to give you everything you need. You got to take some things from life because it's not fair. And for us, of people, Black people especially, the a cliche as it may be, but we got to do triple the work as everybody else. And I see it every day, and I feel that mentality has pushed me this far to where I am in my career now. And though it wasn't easy, I got through it. And that part in my life, I would say up to this point, probably no, that part might have been the hardest part of my life. But getting that was the first hardest thing I gotten through up to that point. But that helped me get through being laid off, not being able to find a job for over a year, losing my business essentially during COVID. That has helped me get through all those situations, knowing that life is not linear. My life is like this. And that has made, to the point where I got to this point, it made me enjoy it that much more and make me not take it for granted where I do the deep dive. I don't want to have a parabolic life cycle. I want to be pretty straight and narrow, pretty even. So
Awesome.
I do, I'm grateful for my experiences, whether bad or good.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for highlighting that. You
Mhm.
know, life is not linear. That's the exact reason why I'm doing this series for people to share their journeys, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But
Right.
how the bad and the ugly honestly sets us up. And it sounds like you learned that very early on in
Mhm.
college for yourself. So let's fast forward to your first professional role. So you turn the chapter and you are pursuing sociology and commercial real estate finance. Talk to me about a little bit about how you came to that major, those majors or concentrations, and what that looked like for you.
Well, sociology, I've always loved interacting with people, and I've always loved observing how people interact with each other, with society, with their surroundings. So I thought sociology was a natural fit to go into law school. Again, I've always had real estate in the back of my mind. So I thought the perfect segue into that would be real estate law, not knowing what real estate is at the time and how intricate and interconnected with the entire economy real estate is. So I would say around junior year, one of our chapter president at the time, my pledge sergeant Paul, he got a job as a property manager, a full time job. As you know, he was a sophomore actually, I want to say, and he was working full time and he had the apartment he was living in for free. And I just thought that was the coolest thing, and I wanted to emulate that. So I went around looking for property manager jobs. This is back in the day. So I went around my resume, handed it to every apartment complex I can find, couldn't find any, but our roommate, me and my roommates, we moved into an apartment complex, and they finally let me be a part-time leasing agent once I begged them for a while. And that's where it really hit me that real estate is much more than selling homes and just owning property. It's income producing property is a whole discipline in finance that there's actually majors from. And Mizzou actually has emphasis of real estate finance. So there's a finance degree, and then there's a concentration within that degree, which is real estate finance. So me being me, when I do something, I go all in. I delve fully in. I research everything. I take all the classes I can take. I want to get fully invested and educated in whatever topic that is, and this topic being real estate. So I decided to pursue the real estate finance track and started taking all my finance classes and fell in love with them. I've always been a decent student, but at that point, I would say I was not going to every class. But my finance classes, I went to every single class because I was just so enthralled and so interested in it. This is when the economic downturn was happening, when 2007, 2008, when real estate was collapsing the markets essentially. So I thought that was a good time to learn what was going on. To me, it just made everything more interesting, just to kind of learn what real estate is and how that's really affecting the economy and how everything's tied into one system that can kind of blow up if one domino falls. Just was taken back. So I pretty much got A's in all my real estate finance classes. And my senior year, I realized that I was late in the game and I didn't have I wanted more experience, more work experience. So I finally got a full-time leasing manager job at an adjacent apartment complex. So senior year, I was taking 18 credit hours because I was taking my finance classes and wrapping up the sociology classes. I was working 40 hours. I'd finally landed an internship in real estate. I was doing that. I was getting my real estate broker's license online, doing all this within 1 year because I wanted to come out with a fully stacked resume in order to be competitive and compete with students who are coming out with internships with investment banks or students who were Ivy League kids or target school kids. Just wanted to be able to compete, and it worked. So 2 years after I graduated, when I graduated, it was 2008, which is a terrible time to come out in real estate finance, being that's what the cause of the collapse was in the economy. So our brother helped me land a job first year as a 401k analyst. So I did that for 6 or 7 months, and then laid off from that job. And then I was hired as a property manager for the 469 unit complex. Well, portfolio, I speak. It was 2 different properties, combined 469 units on the south side here in Chicago, South Shore. And I would say 40% of the tenancy was Section 8 voucher tenants. And at that point, that's when I realized how impactful real estate finance and multifamily finance in particular is, because one decision as a property manager, whether it be positive or negative, can affect the lives of 300 people. And one thing I've always wanted to do in my life is have an impactful career, a career where I can impact lives and still make a good living. And I thought multifamily finance and housing finance was a perfect catalyst for my aspirations there. So that just put the battery in my back, working at that apartment complex. But I came in with my political mindset from my college political fight the power mindset still, and the regional manager who was working there at the time, I wasn't a fan of how he treated the tenants. And so I was very militant in college. I hosted a lot of marches, etc. So I thought that I can gather all the property managers up and essentially spark up a coup. And I was pushed out. So I quickly learned the politics game of corporate America. You can't just come in there I was in there fraternity mode, let's just shake it up and get stuff done. But nope. So I was pushed out of there. So for about a year, I was out of work. And then finally in 2010, I saw a job opening for a company called Fitch Ratings. And for those not familiar with Fitch Ratings, if you heard of S&P or Moody's, Fitch Ratings is the third biggest of the big three. So it's a rating agency, which means they rate bonds. So bonds get credit ratings like me or you are going to a credit rating, a FICO score. But with bonds, it's like AAA, triple B, triple double B, etc. So if you've ever heard that before, that's what they're referring to. They're referring to a bond rating. And that name CMBS was so familiar to me because I had a class in one of our classes, our finance classes. An investment banker came in to do a presentation where he was discussing commercial mortgage-backed securities, CMBS bonds, and it was just so interesting to me. I saved the report, the presentation he brought. I saved everything in college. I saved all my books, So it hit me where I saw the name from, and I pulled the report up, about 30, 40-page report, and I read it backwards and forwards about 40 to 50 times before the interview. And I'll never forget going in the interview in the waiting area. There were a couple people waiting to be interviewed, and I heard the conversation. One guy was from Yale, another guy was from Harvard, and they were just discussing the schools they came from and the programs. And my instinct was just to like, oh man, how am I going to compete with these guys? But being an athlete, I think that helps me a lot as well. Because I think athletes they're able to tap into a mentality where nobody's going to defeat you. I'm trained so much for this moment. Again, I said my confidence is at a heightened level. So I just went into that athlete mode and said, well, you're going to have to beat me here. I know you're not going to outcharm me. I'm a great interviewer, and that's due to I feel like I'm engaging. I feel like I'm charming. I feel like I have a great story, all these things. And I just feel like they didn't have that. So went into the interview, lo and behold, one of the guys who interviewed me, it was like a marathon interviews. It's at least 6 different interviews with like 3 to 4 different people at a time. And one of the guys who was interviewing me, who ended up being my boss, he asked, what's a capitalization rate, which is your net operating income divided by the market value of the property. It splits out a ratio. That's the year one return metric for your income producing property. Doesn't matter what that means, but he told me verbatim when the interview was done, thank you so much for being so prepared, because his eyes lit up when I said that. And I can just tell that, oh, nobody answered the question right. He was like, everybody who came in this interview was unprepared, didn't know the questions. And I realized because these guys had finance degrees, and real estate finance is such a niche segment of finance, whereas our ratios are not the same as a typical ratio corporate financier we use. We're not going off the cost of capital, et cetera. We're going off of debt coverage ratios and cap rates and LTVs, et cetera. So if you're not trained on this, or if you didn't have a specialization in school, you're not going to know this. So obviously landed the job, and so proud of myself because my boss was even saying, I was the first analyst they hired since the collapse. So I was the only one in my analyst class, which ended up kind of hurting me because when I came in there, I was so high. I'm like, oh man, I did great in my interview. My boss said they received 5,000 applications, and I'm the one who got the job out of 5,000 applications. And that first day, I never sat in a room where everybody was speaking English and I didn't understand a word that was being said. Like, it was so over my head. The ratios they were using were so different from the ratios I learned in college. The terminology was so different. The way they dwelled, the way they dug into the properties, the way they referenced the economy, what's going on with the treasury, bond rates. It was just a lot to happen in one sitting. And I just went home like, whoa, just being so humble, like I'm not prepared. And so that first year I was working as a first year analyst. They were working me 60 to 80 hours a week. And I would come home for the small amount of hours every day, and I would study because at that point, everything they're feeding me, I'm just memorizing it, not necessarily not understanding conceptually what's happening. I'm just memorizing the ratios and memorizing how things are supposed to be calculated in Excel. And so I will get all this in the daytime, and then I'll go, or in the nighttime at work, and then go home, try to, you know, actually take it all in, try to memorize it, and then go back to work as a zombie. And I did that for 2, 3 years straight until it finally started clicking. They always say it's like at least a year to 2 year learning curve, and they really mean it. So working at Fitch was like getting my master's in finance because it was that brutal. And I so grateful for that because that prepared me and that put me above so many other candidates in future jobs and future job openings, honestly.
That's awesome. Thank you for explaining and talking through the grind from senior year all the way through you landing your first role. It sounds like, you are someone who took advantage of the economic crisis of 2008 as far as learning
Right.
how we got here and then turning that around and using it in your professional career, um, and but also having to go to school
Right.
again when you landed that role at Fitch and humbling yourself, to know that, okay, I don't know it all,
Mhm.
um, but give me the space and opportunity, and you ran with it. That's awesome. Thank you for talking us through that.
Mhm.
So let's fast forward. I want to fast forward us to the decision for you to pivot within your career and go into business for yourself. Talk to us a little bit about that project and how you talked about how COVID interrupted those plans. So, if you could share some highlights of that chapter.
Yeah, so I was at Fitch for 7 years. Then uh, that position again is you're rating bonds, you're doing high level financial modeling, Monte Carlo simulations. You're doing asset level underwriting. You know, these bonds have 100 properties, or actually 120 on average at that time. So it's just a lot of number crunching, a lot of underwriting, and you actually have to go physically see the properties. So it's a lot of travel. And so, however, the properties at this point are being securitized in bonds. So you're not necessarily doing loan level asset underwriting. And that's the experience I wanted past a certain point at Fitch. And so Freddie Mac at the time, Freddie Mac is a government sponsored enterprise, one of two, the other one being Fannie Mae. Essentially what they do, they bolster the secondary commercial real estate market, where they buy these bonds and they repackage them and put a guarantee on them, which essentially makes them more palatable, more favorable for investors, thereby bringing more investors to the table, which essentially lowers the interest rates due to economy of scale. So Freddie Mac, during this time, they had a new bond execution called the K Deal program, where they were essentially taking all these multifamily loans and packaging them into bonds. And I was reading that product during my time at Fitch. So I developed a relationship with a lot of the Freddie Mac underwriters, and that it being multifamily properties, again, I said that was my aspiration at the time to sort of work in housing finance and multifamily finance. I decided to transition to Freddie Mac and work. I was a senior underwriter there. So at the time, I was thinking, I didn't know Freddie's business or the organizational structure is essentially bifurcated by the conventional side and the affordable side. Conventional side being properties that are market rate, and affordable side being properties that are subsidized by either federal or some type of subsidy to keep the rents affordable. Um, I wanted to work on the affordable side, but I was on the conventional side, which is fine. But I was underwriting properties where average rents of $2,000 and $3,000, and that's just not what I signed up for. great experience. At this point, I'm not, at Fitch, I was doing a lot of the high level modeling, financial modeling, and underwriting of the properties. But at Freddie Mac, it's a lot of real estate is a relationship business. And at Freddie Mac, that's when I saw more of the relationship aspects of the business. Whereas I'm still underwriting the properties, I'm still looking at the engineering reports, the appraisals, doing the numbers, but I'm actually maintaining those relationships with the actual borrowers who are coming to us for these loans. So that was different. There was a lot of happy hours, a lot of handshaking, a lot of talking to rich people who don't necessarily care about people who are struggling living in these apartments and how much rent they are paying. They're more so concerned about yield, and I'm in the real estate finance business, so I understand that these deals do have to pencil out. But I also am a sociologist as well, and I'm also an advocate for affordability and people being able to live a good life in this country. So I wasn't feeling the greatest at Freddie Mac, and I decided I had an opportunity to work for. What happened was there's a competition. Fannie Mae, our competitor, was having a competition basically saying if you come up with an affordable housing plan or some kind of way to make housing more affordable, and if it's a decent pilot plan, they will fund your idea. I entered a competition unbeknownst to Freddie Mac because that would be a conflict of interest. I just figured I can come up with some idea. And at this point, this is when our former mayor of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel, closed 50 schools here. And I figured, okay, at this time, this is a new concept, but I considered, hey, why don't I convert one of those vacant schools into an affordable housing complex for teachers and convert the gymnasium into an urban farm? Because that way, my issue with affordable housing was they're only taking care of the supply side, the numerator, which essentially is they're building more housing, but they're not taking care of the demand side, the denominator, whereas people can't afford this housing. You can build all the housing you want, but if people can't afford it, it's a net negative. So I wanted to come up with a concept where you can build housing and at the same time increase people's income. So I figured, why not build an urban farm within the affordable housing complex large enough to employ people around the neighborhood or people who live there, make a profit by selling the crops to a local grocery store or people around the neighborhood by creating a farmer's market, etc. So that was the idea. Chicago, the bureaucracy and the red tape is crazy. Quickly found out that it was possible to do it here, given the amount of capital that would require. Fortunately, one of my college classmates in Kansas City, he heard the idea, Matt Oates, he heard about the idea. I was talking to him about it, and he was on the school board in Kansas City at the time and knew about a vacant elementary school that was sitting vacant for 10 years, suggested we do the plan there. And I essentially asked him to go into business with me, and he put me in front of the mayor, in front of the superintendents. He put me in front of everybody I need to get in front of, put a proposal together, and we were going to get the school for $1 provided we create teacher housing and make it essentially an asset for the community, which we were going to do. And then the pandemic happened, once in a lifetime pandemic. So we were going to get a grant from the Kauffman Foundation, which is a large foundation in Kansas City, a pre-development grant. A pre-development grant essentially funds the acquisition of a property. It funds all your environmental studies, engineering reports, etc. And they essentially said that due to the pandemic, they can't be the first one in with money, but they can come in for gap funding. So essentially meaning you find a bunch of other funders that will come in to fill any gaps. We didn't have any other funders at the time. So the deal was dead. And another development team came in, bought the building for cash, and that was a wrap. Me being me, again, I say something happens, one speed hump, you just go right over it, keep it moving. I condensed the plan by building the urban farm on my rooftop here at home. Showed that you can build an urban farm anywhere with aeroponic and hydroponic technology. Won a few grants, but with that concept, proof of concept project on my roof, which essentially just reimbursed me from all the money I borrowed from family and friends. And that was that. So the farm is still going strong. The concept is still going strong. It's just condensed into, I want to do more of no more than 10 units. I don't want to use, I don't want to, I don't want to do like low income housing tax credits, given there'll be a conflict of interest with my current position. And one thing I did learn in that project is that we bit off way more than we can chew. And I didn't know that. However, it taught me so much. 'Cause up to this point, I was on the debt side. I wasn't on real estate development. I wasn't on low income housing tax credits. I didn't know what any of that was. I knew it was, but I didn't know how to finance any of that. And it forced me to go out there and learn because I was my own boss. So nobody was going to teach me. And by doing that, I realized how much I love affordable housing development and how much I wanted to be in that space. And long story short, I eventually transitioned into the city of Department of Housing job where I learned it from the ground up. And this project helped me get to that point. 1 year with the city Department of Housing, learning how affordable housing development is done from actual city officials, landed this job with National Equity Fund where I'm financing affordable housing developments across the nation from one of the most recognized affordable housing firms out there. So it was a rough road, but again, it doesn't have to be linear in order for it to be good. It can be like this so long as you are resilient, you learn your lessons, and you get better along the way. And that's truly what my life is.
You use the analogy of the winding road, but for me, I see it as more of a slingshot. You
Yeah.
know, you were working and saw that you weren't having the impact that you envisioned in doing this work, nor were you working with people who um, had alignment with your vision of caring about the impact they're making of housing affordability. And
Mhm.
so because of that, you took a step back, took a risk, and everything was in alignment. And then once in a lifetime event happened to set you back. But
Mhm.
it's in that setback that you were able to experiment a little with other different business ventures. You talked about the urban farming. There's also a stint within photography where you were able to monetize a passion, your world traveling passion. I know you didn't get a chance to talk about that, but I will highlight that as
Mhm.
well. But all that was, and then obtaining a role within the city to learn the system of affordability, of affordable housing, and how all of that helped you to land your current role in doing what you set out to do pre-pandemic when you had this epiphany to chart your own path.
Right. Right.
I see it as more of a slingshot. Thank you
That's
so
true. I could see that.
thank you for unpacking that. Thank you for your vulnerability and talking through that period where you took a risk on yourself. And even when you do all things the right way, there's still, setbacks that are beyond our control. And navigating that is something that I know wasn't easy for you, but yet you talked about, your first setback in college and your transition from student athlete to college student.
Mhm.
It sounds like that really set you up to handle this next chapter that you had to face. So thank you so much for unpacking that a little bit. Believe it or not, we are almost at time. um, Thank you so much for sharing your journey. Just have a couple more questions as we close out today. Um, if you could just offer some advice before we get to the advice piece. So you're in this role, your dream role, it sounds like. Can you talk to me about what's your vision? What's next for you in this journey?
Well, right now my career or my life aspirations, because I feel my career and my life goals coincide at this point. I would say it's three pronged. Where one is I want to increase the supply of affordable housing. That by doing that, I wanted to actually build units. So the affordable housing development we discussed earlier, that created a business out of that, Abodo Development Group, which ties into Abodo Farms, a subsidiary of that group, uh, which is means community or city in our native Igbo tongue. I wanted to build affordable developments that are green, carbon neutral. They are essentially all electric. They have the urban farm apparatus, geothermal HVAC, all these things. They basically give out less carbon dioxide than they take in, carbon neutral. So that's one, increasing the unit supply. Two, which I think the most important thing is to increase access to capital for affordable housing developments across the nation, and that's what I'm doing in my career right now. Whereas I'm the vice president of agency lending. So what we're doing here is we've always been an equity syndicator. So we're bringing in like the housing analogy I gave you earlier, where 10% you're bringing in 10,000 in equity. We're doing that in the millions or even in the billions. So we're bringing all the equity. But before 2 years ago, we weren't bringing the debt. We didn't have a debt platform in our business. So we would lose the loans to our competitors or other banks, et cetera. We were tired of losing that business. So we created a debt platform, and that's where I come in. So we're funding, our CEO had a stat the other day in our all staff meeting. Since 1987, we have done 23 billion in equity. And from the last 3 years, our group in particular, we've done 1 billion in debt. And that equates to around 10 million a day of capital that goes into to create affordable housing in this country. So I think I'm fulfilling my goals and my aspirations on providing capital. And finally, I want to influence policy reform. I feel a lot of the reasons why we're in the affordability crisis we're on right now is because obviously a lack of supply, but the policy that enables that is what needs to be reformed, because I feel like a lot of people they're not privy to, they mean well, these laws they pass mean well, but they're going to hurt more than they're going to help. For instance, rent caps and rent stabilization. I always tell people, like, yes, in theory, in the short term, rent caps and rent stabilization is good. You want to lower rent. However, you can't cap the rent and not cap the expenses. So you can't say, hey, rent's kept at 2%, whereas insurance is increasing 15%, even 30% in places like Florida and Texas. Taxes are increasing 10%. Gas is more expensive for your furnace, so that's increasing 10%. Repair and maintenance is getting higher because pay people, the labor is more intensive, and you have to pay these people more. All these things are increasing, and the revenue is not. So eventually, developers are not going to build anymore because they can't afford it. These deals can't pencil out. Everything has a cost in this country. Nothing's for free. So you're not going to get anybody to build an apartment building for you for free. They're not going to get paid, and a bank's not going to finance an apartment building if they're not going to get their money back. So I would like to, with my experience, I would like to somehow in my retirement, my twilight years, get some sort of think tank position or get some sort of policy appointment, federal or local or state level, where I can actually influence these housing laws and create change that would increase the supply of units, ultimately making the world more affordable, which is my ultimate goal. Just want everybody to live an affordable and healthy lifestyle in this beautiful world that we're meant to be in, that somehow with human error has gone awry and we mess it up along the way, and we got to bring it back. And I'm trying to do my part.
Awesome. Thank you. And I have been beyond excited to see you in this role, already making impact
Thank
um,
you.
in such a grand scale, in such a short amount of time as well.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. You have helped me along the way. So I love what you're doing here. Everything you're saying here has been words you told me in private, and you have seen me along my entire career and been there for me, and I'm coaching you along the way, Coach Stella, and I appreciate that. So congratulations to you and all you accomplished with this series. It's been going great, and I hope that everybody's getting everything that they should be getting out of it, because it's very useful information that the youth needs. So kudos to you.
Yes, and Allah, thank you so much. Along those same lines, the next generation would love for you to just take a few minutes. If someone is interested in getting into commercial real estate finance, what are some advice or sage nuggets that you have for them? In number one, what skills do they need? What should they study? What should they focus in? And where should they go? Where should they start?
Honestly, if you're not in school, if you're in school, I would say start taking finance classes. If you're not, the internet is such a wonderful resource, and even nowadays, it's so much better than when I was a first year analyst. There are podcasts, there are um, uh, YouTube channels, there's AI, there's so many different mediums where the whole focus is real estate finance, and it actually teaches you how to model, because that's the number one thing in real estate. If you want to be in real estate finance, you got to learn how to model. And by modeling, I mean financial modeling in Microsoft Excel. And you can't be one of those people who use their mouse, because that will waste your time. You got to be fast with your fingers, use just keyboard shortcuts. You got to know your ratios. You got to know your formulas. You got to understand conceptually what the big picture is. And the only way to do that is by studying, studying, studying. There's no easy way to get in this field. There's no easy way, in my opinion, to make a lot of money in this country. I feel like real estate itself is not even an easy way to make money. It's a slow progression to risk-adjusted returns. And the investors who make money are the ones who realize that. And the people who are great investors and the people who do good in this industry are the people who constantly stay up to date on what's going on in the markets, the people who constantly work on their modeling skills, the people who read every single piece of information they can find on this subject matter, because it's so nuanced, it's so intricate, it's just no way to know everything. But I will say, when I was in school, what helped me a lot is reading the Wall Street Journal. As simple as that sounds, you'll realize how much you learn about the economy and what's going on by just simply reading these articles. What I would do, I would read these articles, I would sit there and not understand one word, and I would look it up. Okay, what does this mean? Study what that means, come back to the article. Now I have more context. Now I understand. Now and I did that for literally 2 years. I learned so much about finance on my own outside of school. Then I will go on a site called Investopedia. It's like an encyclopedia, but for investors. They have so many tutorials on financial concepts, like basically bond finance, stock finance, alternative investments, etc. Get out there and study. There's a multitude of information out there, and you have all the time to take it in. You just had, when I was working at Fish my first year, I stopped going out. I didn't have a social life. My social life was traveling for work. And then luckily, Mizzou people was all over. So I'll go to dinner with a couple of Mizzou people, but that's it. I didn't go out for literally 5 or 6 years because I was that busy studying after work. So you're going to get what you put in, you're going to get out what you put into this field or any field. And once you get to that point, once you feel like you have the concepts and the ratios and all the studying's done, Get out there and network. You have, like, people have to know you. People have to see your face. People have to advocate for you in those rooms when they're deciding who they want to hire. Get on LinkedIn. If you see somebody, honestly, what I do is if I see somebody Black who works in commercial real estate finance, I just send them a friend request. They usually accept, and I just usually just ask them, like, hey, I'm in the industry. Just want to see if I can pick your brain and talk to you more. And I would say I never got turned down one time. People are very willing to help other people who look like us in this industry because there's not a lot of us. So get on LinkedIn, expand your network, talk to people, go to all these industry networking events, put your name out there, show that you're charismatic. And you show that you're charismatic. And even if you're not charismatic, you get charismatic by putting yourself in these social situations and making yourself uncomfortable. The more you talk to people, the more you read, the more you do these things, you're going to be better. Everything is repetition. And that's why I love being an athlete. And that's why I think every kid should play some organized sport at some point, because you learn that at a young age that to get better, you have to do things repetitively. It's all about consistency. That's how neural pathways get formed. That's how muscles get formed. That's how the body works. So that's my advice to anybody young out there. Put in the work, and you will get what you put. You will get in what you put out, or reverse that. You'll get out what you put in.
Absolutely. Spoken like a true athlete. The athletic mindset was what kept coming to mind as you were talking through the strategy. Trudy, thank you so much for joining us today. Folks, if you would like to continue to reach out or would like to pick CJ's brain, please feel free to reach out to him. He is on LinkedIn, so feel free to reach out. To learn more about the commercial real estate finance industry, affordable housing, urban farming, photography, all things football, multifaceted. It's been an honor. I'm sorry, say that again.
Fashion tips, dressing. Yeah.
All the things, multifaceted, all the advice. Thank you so much for joining us today. I feel like I need to have you back because this was like 1/3 of the journey. But it has been a pleasure watching in front row your journey since day one. And you are someone who, and I said it all the time to other folks, the most resilient athletic mind, the most irrational confidence individual I have ever met. And it's been a true pleasure watching your journey. And I look forward to the impact that you continue to make in this community and in the world. So with that, I would love to end today with some spitfire question, top of mind thinking. You don't think too hard, ask the question, top of mind, and would love to hear your response. So you ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. If you did not have to work your 60, 80-hour day week, if you didn't have this job, what would you be doing with your time?
I would still be trying to raise capital to build affordable housing developments, because that's what I was doing before this job, and that's my passion. That's my life. I'll still be working out all the time, which I still do. Again, I'll still be traveling, which I currently do. So not much will change, honestly. It will still be the same lifestyle.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. What is one song that just gets you hyped? If you hear it, it's over. What's that one song?
It's so many songs that I like that. Let's see. I will have to say right now at this point, it's this song. I'm sure you're not gonna know it. It's this song called "Soft Touch" by this artist called Jameson. It's just like a very dancey. He's like moving all over the place. It's like a dancey song, and nobody dances anymore. society. I don't know what's going on with society. The kids don't dance anymore, and it just gets me so amped every time I hear it. It gets me so happy. I just move around, just dance all over the place. So that's what it is. It just brings me back to my happy space and gets my hips moving and shaking. So
Movement.
Jameson.
Love it. Love it. All right. And so, you said you're born and bred Rogers Park, Chicago. What is something that is so Rogers Park of you?
I love diversity. That's me. I would say because Rogers Park is the most diverse area in Chicago. We have everybody. I grew up with black, white, Puerto Rican, Filipino, Jewish, Hindu, Muslim, everybody. So I traveled all over this world, and I will say I've never been culture shocked because I have literally went to school or hung out or been friends with every type of person you can imagine. And I'm like that to this day where I just love being in diverse spaces. I love traveling still, and I just love learning about different cultures. And I just think that's all testament to Rogers Park, and that's what made me.
100% agree.
Mhm.
There's no place like Rogers Park. All
Absolutely.
right. Last question for the world traveler in you. What is tell me one off the path journey that you participated in any of your travels, off the beat?
Oh, I would say my favorite one is my 30th birthday with you, where we went to Rio de Janeiro. I'm sorry, Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, and I wanted to go on a sunset hike the night of my birthday. So we had it's a huge hill called Two Brothers Hill. So we had to walk through the favelas in the middle of the night. We had those torches in our head, and it was just me, you, and our tour guide, who I wasn't really a tour guide. I think he's just a resident of one of the favelas and just happens to just take people up there. So we're going up there in the middle of the night. We're exhausted. It's such a high mountain, and the sun's coming up, and I'm like, man, and we're just like huffing and puffing, and I'm looking back at you. I'm like, oh my god, why did I make you do this? I just realized I don't think you've ever hiked before. I'm like, why did I make her do this? And you're like, just go ahead, don't miss the sunlight, don't miss the sunrise without me. So I'm going. Then I get there, and I turn around, and here you go. You're walking up just out of breath, but you made it. And that's at that point, I'm like, wow, she's really down. She's right. I always knew you ride or die, but I've always at that instant, I'm like, wow, she's really down, really ride or die for me. That's something. That's just amazing. She just hiked this ginormous mountain in the middle of the night through the favelas of Rio and made it up here just for her little brothers to see the sunrise on his 30th birthday. So that's a moment I always hold dear
Yes.
to my heart.
Yes, I have been hiking before, but
Oh,
not to that extent. A 4 a.m. was the hike time.
oh yeah, that's what it was. Yeah,
What was advertised as a 40-minute hike turned into a 90-minute hike.
right. If not more, I don't even. Yeah.
And yes, that was the traveling experience where I realized we are two different travelers.
Yeah, that is very true. I am not your typical traveler.
No, you are the adventure traveler, and there are plenty of
Absolutely.
adventure bunnies out there. But yeah. Oh, thank you so much for
No
indulging
problem.
me with these fun little questions. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. You're welcome back anytime to
Thank
expand
you.
on things a little bit more. You all, thank you so much for continuing to join us on these summer series of our career journeys. Tune in next week when we have our next guest. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Be sure to catch the replay. All our videos, all our interviews will live on my YouTube channel, Coach Stella, Career Journeys with Coach Stella. Thank you all so much for tuning in. If you would like to be a guest, or if you have any careers that you would like me to spotlight and unpack, please feel free to reach out to me, Coach Stella OC at Gmail. Thank you all again, and I will see you next time.
Thanks for having me.